So I was talking to Reverend Taryn the other day, and she brought it to my attention that June and July are usually the time when policymakers drop temperature rising, infuriating policies. Have y'all noticed that? Really, when it's hot, when people are already mad at all the sweat that we're made to endure, that's when we get handed foolishness, like fallout, cuts that reach straight into people's hearts and minds and bodies. Y'all have probably heard about gutted HIV prevention care, which I'm so grateful that folks at Georgia Equality are fighting to make accessible. But, you know, we also got to deal with slash gender-affirming care and cuts to Medicaid and SNAP voting rights and continued rollbacks on DEI programs. That's why we're singing about breaking these chains, because this stuff is happening right now. All of these changes have dropped, and they are being intensified in the heat of Atlanta. Y'all, this is my first Atlanta summer. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing with this black shirt on, but y'all hear me, in real life, these summer release policies are designed to overheat us. They are designed, seriously, I feel like they're coming out right now to keep us feeling so burnt out, so furious, so exhausted from being hot and mad that we got nothing left for organizing and creativity and joy. That's what they're trying to do. I'm so grateful that we came today and we are flexing some creativity as we sing these new songs. Oh my gosh. We hearing these chains falling right now. This is the work that we are born to do, and they try to take it from us. That's the strategy. To drain our light, to drain our energy from showing up on days like this. If you feel like there is a coordinated attack on your energy, anybody else? Y'all, I do too. And it's up to us to guard against it. So part of leading change, which I know every time y'all come in the front of the church, there's big signs that says living liberation and leading change. And so I want to be a part of talking about that. A part of leading change is the reclaiming of our minds and our bodies. It's refusing to let the cruelty of policymakers set the temperature of our days. Audre Lorde named this for us decades ago when she said, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. That is an act of political warfare. And then Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us that our ability to experience joyous satisfaction, the delight in being alive, that itself is a measure of freedom. So you got to be able to claim this sense of freedom for yourself. And in this way, joy, I hope the joy that you're feeling together this morning, joy is not a distraction from the work. In fact, this kind of joyous love that we cultivate, create together, hopefully you're also cultivating and creating in your lives at home. This is the fuel of the work, of doing the work. It's what fuels the energy to sustain showing up for immigrant action, for showing up for earth justice, for showing up for housing advocacy, and for showing up for legislative action with the stamina to transform what harms us. You got to feel the joy. And then in this November, when the midterms are live, this is our nearest chance to change who holds power in Congress and to challenge the enablers of things like Project 25, this big ugly bill. And at this point, we now have 2.5 years until the next U.S. presidential election. 2.5 years at this point. This will be the chance. This will be our chance to loosen the grip of present-day madness. I know it's good to clap and be excited about what we're going to do in 2.5 years, because you got to have, for real, so thank you, for real. We got to sustain that energy for this next 2.5 years. And I was thinking about that, sincerely. 2.5 years, as I prepared for this service, I couldn't help but make the connection that 2.5 years is also how long it took after the Emancipation Proclamation took effect on January 1st, 1863, before freedom reached the last enslaved Black Americans in the Confederate States. 2.5 years, that's, it could feel like a long time, but it can, it's something about it. But I wanna continue talking about Juneteenth, because this lesser known truth is that the Emancipation Proclamation was, in part, a war measure. Did y'all know that Lincoln actually issued that proclamation in the wake of the Battle of Antietam in September 1862? Did y'all know that? I see some head nods. Some historians are like, yeah, this was the day where in one day, more than 22,000 men and women were killed, wounded, or left missing. And it was out of that grim leverage, that violence, that Lincoln, it was out of that grim leverage of violence between the Union and the Confederacy that Lincoln then announced enslaved people in states that were still in rebellion would be declared free, effective the first day of 1863. But note this footnote. The proclamation did not actually free everyone. It did not apply to the slave-holding border states loyal to the Union, nor to certain Union-controlled areas. You got to know this history, these little details. The moral goal of full abolition was still unfolding at that time. And at that point, Texas, being all remote, with only a few Union troops, they didn't have the presence to enforce anything. And so Texas became the place where enslavers fled with the people who refused to free their people. Because they went there hoping that distance being in Texas will let them hold on to bondage a little bit longer. We see remnants of that now where people flee to other areas so they can hold on to power in certain ways. The history be teaching us things. And so at that time, Texas became a place where enslavers fled with the people they refused to flee, hoping that that distance would let them hold on a little longer. And it was not until June 19th of 1865 that Union Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston with 2,000 federal troops to enforce the proclamation and read General Order Number 3. I say enforce the proclamation because sometimes we forget that sometimes holding on to freedom, fighting for freedom, it takes bringing some enforcement with it. Again, I'm just saying, sometimes history teaches us things, announcing that time that more than 250,000 enslaved people in Texas were finally legally free. Here's something that we don't often talk about. That order didn't announce freedom. It promised something that was really radical. I didn't know this until I was preparing for this. It declared, quote, absolute equality of personal rights and the rights of between former masters and slaves. Again, it declared absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. Scholars noted that it was in this respect more progressive because it, in the very same breath, told people, it was more progressive because it claimed this absolute equality, but what damaged it was in that very same breath, the order told the newly free to, quote, remain quietly in their present homes and work for wages, with no power on earth to guarantee either one. This is the kind of freedom that was announced, but immediately hedged. This is absolute equality promised, but still, even 160 years later, is not arrived in the body. This is the gap that Juneteenth makes us look at and refuse to look away from. This is why I talk about the history of it, the distance between liberty declared and liberty actually allowed, between freedom announced and freedom embodied. So folks, I know I don't got to tell y'all this morning that gap is not a relic. That's not a thing in the past. We're still living in it now, which is why we're talking about it. The wars of oppression that are raging right now, policies being written as if cruelty is a governing philosophy. Confederate-minded folks are still fighting the liberations that they never wanted us to have. That's why I'm talking about this history. They never wanted us to have it. This very Tuesday, some go back to polls. At the very next day, Wednesday, June 17th, lawmakers are gathering at the Gold Dome to start redrawing our maps, drawing lines built to fold away the voting power of Black Georgians before 2028. They're doing that now. And that gap between freedom declared and freedom allowed is being measured out in district lines right now, just down the road from where we're sitting in this day and age. But hear this, y'all. We're not going to let them draw those lines in quiet. That same morning, we heard that Reverend Taryn and a dozen other faith leaders are going to gather at the Georgia Dome with Georgia NAACP for the South Got Something to Say, and we're going to say, ain't going to let nobody turn us around, right? Y'all going to show up on that same day. If your body can carry you there, then let it, because Galveston teaches us that freedom has to be carried. So carry it to the Gold Dome. This is the very thing of the gospel of Juneteenth, the good news inside the grief that we are not called to wait politely at the edge of a gap for someone to come and read us no order. We are called to declare freedom ourselves. Y'all, we can consider Opal Lee the grandmother of Juneteenth. At 89 years old, y'all, this is when she set out to walk from Fort Worth, Texas, all the way to Washington, D.C., pressing this nation to make Juneteenth a holiday that it can no longer ignore. And every leg of that journey that she made, she walked 2.5 miles, 2.5 miles for the 2.5 years that it took freedom to reach Galveston. She did this starting at 89 years old. Then in 2021, she was able to stand in the White House and watch Juneteenth become federal law. Don't tell me anybody in this room feel like they're too old to make change happen. No. Opal Lee showed us. And when she got there, as she put it, she said the 4th of July freed the land, but Juneteenth is what freed the people. That's what she said. That's what she said. Yes. And so here's the truth, that when we flatten and make Juneteenth only a barbecue or a party, that freedom, even though it was already declared, it still had to be carried state by state, from body to body, mile by mile, against people who were fighting to keep free folk enslaved. So freedom is not only a document, freedom is something that has to be carried from body to body. And I know a little something about that, and I know that y'all do too. Last week, when we were here together, I talked a little bit about being in that oppressor's gaze, that internalized lens of patriarchy that gets installed so efficiently that it goes back around and doesn't even need a guard. We become our own overseer in this way, carrying a watchtower inside. And so I just want to share one last confession for the summer that I hope be helpful to y'all. So for years and years, I would go for runs, and I would run in long, baggy shorts, down at least to my knees. And I told myself that it was all about comfort, but if I'm honest, the real reason was I was afraid of how I might be perceived if I wore short shorts in public. I mean, I thought somebody might think I looked, and I'm going to use the word that this patriarchal gaze has used. You know, I might look gay if I have on little shorts. But I want to pause about that, because at first, there was this feeling as if that would be an insult, when the truth is, that's a compliment, actually. Let me just say that. It really is. But then, you know, underneath this joke was also something that I had to face, that I had this discomfort in my body about being perceived as gay or whatever, and of what it meant to have on short shorts. Nobody was running beside me legislating my shorts. That wasn't happening. There was this internal shame whip in me. It was in my own hand, and I had been freed a long time ago on paper. Nobody told me that. And every value I preach and still, my legs were bound by this gaze that I never consented to. So on my birthday, I decided to go for a run, and I shed the baggy shorts, and I put on some little short shorts. And I ran through Freedom Park with my legs all out, feeling scandalously free. And so I'm not going to tell you that the heavens opened. I mean, I felt really exposed. And then I felt ridiculous for feeling exposed. Like, what is this? People run around in shorts all the time. But because it was around mile 2 that something finally let go, and the proclamation of my own liberation reached my legs. Y'all, this is where Beyonce's Freedom song becomes more than a song to me. It becomes a theological sequence, which tends to happen when I'm running. Probably the same thing while y'all are at the gym, you're listening to music. Everything becomes theology, like the Spirit speaking to you. And living liberation, it means refusing the yoke we have learned to fasten to our own bodies. It means naming the gap between what we believe and what we let ourselves truly feel. It means the body deciding it's free even before the world agrees. It is like Sonia Renee Taylor's truth that the body is not an apology. And more than that, her words, liberation, this is a quote, liberation is the opportunity for every human, no matter their body, to have unobstructed access to their highest self. Liberation is for every human to live in radical self-love, end quote. Yes, that is what it's really about. Unobstructed access to your highest self. That's the freedom that Galveston was reaching for. That's the freedom my legs was reaching for. That's the freedom that I think somebody else in this room or watching online might be reaching for. Because here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, really. This story about freed legs is nothing unless it carries me to you. Truly. My liberation can't stop at my own skin and with the stories that I tell. And your liberation can't stop at yours. We need each other to survive. And so this is the last part. I know that I'm going long, but I promise you it's worth it. So I want to invite y'all into something else that I thought of on my birthday. So you can imagine this is a part of the birthday gift that I'm inviting y'all to share in. What if we, as progressive people, liberal people, justice people, rebelled against the entire narrative that this political moment by acting like we never got the word that we lost anything? Seriously. Like it's kind of like Galveston in reverse. They were free, but they didn't know it. And what if we just behaved as if nobody told us that certain rights were canceled? I mean, I'm a black trans person, and I do my best to live freely every day. What if every day that they say that there's no more celebration of recognition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we keep celebrating it anyway? What if we keep doing that? We keep recognizing DEI. Yes. What if we keep partnering with and funding the communities that center and uplift those pushed to the margins? What if the narrowing of the DOD's list of recognized religions, y'all might have heard about that. What if we continue to claim Unitarian Universalism anyway? We claim Wiccan and pagan and African traditional spirituality anyway. We do it anyway. We refuse the lie that spiritual identity is limited to their limited paperwork. I mean, truly. And seriously, what if we refuse the lie of the gender binary? We refuse the heteronormative household. We refuse to chain ourselves to the harmful cuts to healthcare, and instead we demand care, we demand access, we demand medication, we demand dignity. I mean, really, we just keep showing up, demanding care. We just don't accept it. I mean, they cut HIV funding, so what if we take turns going to the pharmacies and just telling them, no, we need this medicine that our people need to live. I know that's what I would do. If my mama needed any medication, I'm just going to keep showing up until somebody changed their mind. No, go get someone else. We're going to wait. I'll call somebody, hold a place in line, file the pill, call back, get on somebody's nerves, get on everybody's nerves until somebody listens and gives us what we need. What if we just did that? Truly. This is what love organized looks like. Not just a hashtag, but a rotation, a schedule, a ride, a phone tree, a holy irritation that refuses to let bureaucracy become a death sentence. They cut food stamps, so we take turns getting a little extra food from the pantry and from our own pantry and taking it to our people. We become the kind of people who refuse to accept no as the final word in somebody's life. This is what it means to lead change. We can be like St. Harriet Tubman, freed and turning back. Seriously, because freedom that ends with one ain't big enough to save us all. And none of us is free until we all are. So y'all, hear the call. Juneteenth is not only a commemoration, it is a commissioning. Don't wait to be free. You already are. The proclamation was signed at the foundation of the world. Let it reach your body. Let it reach your legs, your voice, the watchtower that you've carried inside that's governing over everything. Break what has bound you, then turn back for each other. Vote for change. Take the next shift of watching somebody's kids. Take turns prepping and delivering food. Advocate on somebody's behalf. Proclaim freedom in your own life and guard each other's joyous light like the holy thing that it is. So let us be people who embody liberation. Let us be people who lead change. Let us be people who keep moving the needle towards greater liberation. never letting anyone turn us back.